Welcome to Canyons Church. We are so glad for you to be joining with us today. We have a great service planned for you. We are in part 2 of In Your Shoes. This is a series that is really about expanding our perspective and maybe taking a look at somebody else's and some other worldviews and figuring out how to navigate what happens when somebody else sees the world differently than we do. And let me give you a hint. It starts with empathy. Anyway, if you missed last week, you can go back to our website and check that out there. One thing I do want to remind you of is our mission, to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. And this is true week in and week out in all of our environments, whether we're at church or you're online or wherever we're at. If you're part of Canyons Church, if this is where you engage with, that's our mission, to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. And sometimes that looks like serving. Sometimes that looks like, just having a conversation. Sometimes that looks like inviting them to something. Sometimes that looks like baptism. We just had a baptism recently. Whatever that next step is for you, we want to try to encourage you to do just that. And please, tell us. Let us come along that journey with you and cheer you on the way. Now, like I said, we're going to be here for just about an hour, maybe a little bit less than that. And I hope you enjoy our service.
Hey, Kelly. And this is JJ, our audio.
You do it on the inside of your shirt. Hey, what are we doing here? I don't know.
No idea.
They didn't tell me.
They didn't tell me either.
Good morning, guys. You can come right over here.
Where are we going?
I don't think we signed up for this. Hi.
Hi. If you can stand right behind that line.
Okay.
Today, you are going to be running a mile.
No, we're not.
Hey,
We'll hold all questions to the end. You may be thinking to yourself, did I wear the right shoes to run a race in?
big no.
Yeah.
Here's how we're gonna make this fair for you, okay? Remove your shoes and place them in front of you. So go ahead, you can do that right now. You can leave your socks on or not.
Real quick. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Great. And now I want each of you to take one big step to your right with the person on the end going to the beginning.
Oh, right on.
Oh man.
I'm in the wedges.
I got so lucky. This is gonna be great.
I can
Oh,
get both
God.
of my feet in one of your
Guys, you don't know what's gonna happen.
Big guy in the little
I'm just
shoes.
assuming.
You don't know what's gonna happen.
Can I have your shoes? Oh,
Please.
Say hello and get acquainted with your new shoes. And let's go ahead and put those bad boys on. We've got a race to run.
Oh, my God, I do not like feet.
Well, today you're gonna like them.
Yeah.
I need tape.
You're doing good.
I
Want me
need
to
that
help
tape.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Garrett, those are perfect.
I don't hate this.
Now, can we not put your toe in at least?
No,
Okay.
it's gonna
not
break.
gonna work.
I don't appreciate any
You
of
want me
this.
to tape you down too?
They won't go in, so we're good.
So, runners, are you ready?
No, we're not ready.
Is this the
We
finish
are
line?
ready.
This is the start line and the finish line. All right, guys, let's get ready. On your mark, get set, go.
Ah, it's really uncomfortable.
These are really coming out of my shoes.
How are those loafers?
Terrible.
Really?
They're so sweaty.
Do you hate how sweaty and gross they are?
I can't stand it between my toes.
Other people's feet sweat. It's yucky, huh? Ken, how you doing, my man?
Can't breathe.
Carrie, slow down.
I feel like you should just...
boots and running.
John, you look pretty comfortable.
Yeah, super.
You're hurting. Oh, you're making me hurt.
Is this supposed to happen?
I feel bad. Come here.
Kelly took her shoes off. Oh, for sure.
It's so difficult.
Ken, you got my sandals in the water.
Listen, your sandals are over.
Hope you're learning a lot, Ken.
Your sandals are over.
Y'all are looking great. Let's dip out and go across.
Pretty nice to meet you.
Ken!
We'll hit the side of the cones so I don't get their air.
Wow.
Going for the pass.
No, Ken.
And heels, no less. God, it must be nice to meet you.
I'm so sweaty.
We're beating the shortcutters.
I think I'm killing your shoes, Garrett. I've already rubbed under my foot raw.
Man, Carrie's determined to win.
She is. She's welcome to win.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sweaty.
I feel like our cut through is farther than the mile.
Nah,
I hope there's not a second take on this.
No second take. There's no way. There's no way. Oh, there's no way.
Come on, kid.
I'm coming.
Come on. Come on.
Come on, guys, you got this.
Dig deep.
Pick it up. You're in women's shoes. You can do this.
Nothing like sharing some toe fungus with your friends, right? It's gross. But, I mean, it makes a pretty clear illustration that walking a mile in somebody else's shoes does not feel comfortable. It is not comfortable. Well, last week, one of the primary points, one of the primary ideas that we had is simply this, that loving Jesus is easier than loving like Jesus. You see, loving Jesus, pretty much everybody does that. There's very few people that are like, man, I just can't get along with Jesus. No, most everybody, regardless of what they believe about who Jesus may have been, they're okay with Jesus. They're like, yeah, I don't know if he was everything that, Christians believe he was, but he was a pretty upstanding citizen. He was okay. He was a pretty good guy. Everybody is okay with Jesus for the most part. But that's not what Jesus called us to. That's not what he challenged us to. That's not what he asked us to do as Jesus followers. We're to follow him. And when we follow him, we're actually to love like him. And too often, we have this notion of what loving like him looks like. We have this, we water it down for ourselves. And there's a version that maybe I'll share with you. It's the New Easy Version. I don't know if you've heard of this version. The New Easy Version. It's in John chapter 34 of the New Easy Version. A new command I give you. This is Jesus' one command. Love one another as they are lovable. So you should love one another as they are lovable. Right? So we're like, man, it's still pretty challenging some days, but it's way easier than the original. This isn't what Jesus said at all. Because it's not based on whether somebody else has merit or deserves to be loved or has earned your love. No, it's based on his example, because this is the actual one command that Jesus gave us. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. And when Jesus was sharing this with the disciples, during the Passover feast, hours before, kind of the end of this ministry, what it was going to look like before it took on a new life later on in Jesus, before he died on the cross and then again rose from the dead with his new life. So this is just hours before that he gives us this one command. And this one singular command should be our driving force behind everything that we do. The disciples, when they're in this room, hearing this for the first time, or maybe processing it through differently than they'd heard before, they've got to be thinking about the past 3 years that they've been around Jesus, following him, and what that looks like. And what he was about to do was going to take that exponentially to a higher level, because he was going to lay down his life for everyone, not just the favorites, not just the ones that he got along with, not just his people, but for all people, for all time, for you and for me as well. He continues on, he says, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. You see, if we're following Jesus, if we're loving like Jesus loves, not just loving Jesus, but loving like Jesus, people will be able to identify and recognize. My wife, on a regular basis, she'll meet somebody and it'll be outside of the church context, and she'll be, out in public somewhere out in the wild, and she'll meet them and she'll come back. She goes, I think they love Jesus. Like, she has this inkling. She has this, this Jesus like radar. She's like, I think they like Jesus. Why? Why does she pick up on this? Because people that love, not just love Jesus, but people that love like Jesus are known as his disciples, as followers of Jesus. And ultimately, that's the direction that we should be moving in our life. Now, this is really difficult because of people. Right? People make loving people really difficult. And we started this conversation last week. We talked about this a little bit, but it's especially those people. It's not just any people, but it's those people. We talked about those people, and a lot of them have to do with driving capabilities, potential. Like, there's a lot of those people that we like to point at when it comes to driving. But who drives you nuts? And that's kind of what we ask you. Who are those people for you? And this is, those people is just a group of people who are nearly impossible to love. It could be anything. It could be a thing. Some of them a little bit more silly. They just kind of grate on your nerves. Some of them are a little bit more serious. Maybe it's a racial thing, a gender thing, a generational thing. Whatever it is for you, you have a those people. We all have a those people. Jesus had a those people, right? The religious elites, we talked about this before. The religious elites were those people for Jesus. But here's the thing about those people. This is probably part of the reason why it's difficult for us is because they see the world differently. Oops, I think I spelled that wrong. They see the world, there we go, incorrectly. That's what we think, though. Just because someone sees the world differently than you, we think that therefore it must be incorrect. Because you have the perfect world view for you. No, nobody else sees the world through your eyes better. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other worldviews. Maybe fortunately, right? Because humanity is better with more worldviews and more people in it, seen from different perspectives. If you've ever been in a point of contention, if you've ever been in one of those like arguments with someone, the more people that you have in the room that are, as long as it's healthy and as long as it's able to be like talked out, what you'll find is the more perspectives that are shared around this topic, if you're open to the conversation, it starts to go better. And you realize that maybe you were seen accurately, but maybe you were only seen 15%. And that 15% you had a lockdown, but there's a whole lot more percentage out there, approximately 85% more out there, that you weren't able to see accurately. And other people are able to help share that with us and allow us to see better. Now, when it comes to our relationships, our quality of life, ultimately our quality of life is affected by relationships. You might think, no, wait, I don't know if I really agree with that, because as long as my bills are paid, as long as there's food on the table, as long as I have my needs, and as long as I have a few things that I kind of want, I'm happy, I'm good. I'm thinking bigger picture, though, that your quality of life is absolutely tied to your relationships. We could say the quality of our lives is only as good as the quality of our relationships. You think about that for a second. If your primary relationships are struggling, then it feels like your whole life is struggling. You could have had the best day at work, and if you come home and home is just, you have to walk on eggshells, you're on pins and needles, you have to be super duper careful, like the relationship is just difficult right now. It doesn't matter how good work was. Life and the quality of life is impacted and affected by our relationships. And it's not just the primary relationships. This is all relationships in life. Now, as we get into this idea that Jesus leaves us, this new covenant, this new command, this new idea, right, of loving everybody else as he loved us. That's what we're supposed to do. This is probably what we're going to talk about today, is probably as close to a loophole as you can find for this new command. That ultimately, you only have to love one another if you are around one another. We do this naturally. We recognize this. Certain relationships, certain people, those people that are difficult to get along with, if you keep them far enough away from you, there's no engagement, there's no interaction. And if you do that, you're like, I feel like I can love them better over there. Or maybe it just seems that way, right? It just seems that way. You only have to love one another if you are around one another. Because you're like, how do I love someone poorly if they're not around me? And we have this mentality, this idea that as long as we can kind of escape proximity, that means that it's okay that we may not like someone, or we don't get along with someone, or we don't engage with someone. Because as long as we escape that aspect of it, being around them, then we can love them well from a distance. But that's not even true, is it? I mean, honestly, if it's at a distance, it doesn't matter. You still have a relationship with them. Let's put it this way. We have a relationship with anything we relate to. We have a relationship with anything that we relate to. Now, let's just think about this for a second. I have a relationship with food, 100%. And right now, coming into summer, it's all about the grill. I have a relationship with my grill too. It's like the food that I can put on the grill and smoke for a while and just get that nice smoke ring on the meat. I'm going to start drooling here in a second, but I have a relationship with that style of food right now. Like that is maybe for you, or maybe it's spicy food. I have another relationship with spicy food. There's a certain level of heat that if we approach that, there's that prime time area that if we get into as far as heat, oh my goodness, it does something. My day is better, right? I have a relationship with spicy food, or maybe it's your truck. Maybe it's the boat that your truck is pulling, or maybe it's your house or your plants. Let's be honest. Some of you talk to your plants more than you talk to family members. You have a relationship with your plants. It's okay. It's okay. We understand this. We have relationships with anything that we relate to. And that's including the relationships that are difficult. That's including the people or the things that make life more problematic. Fast food. You have a relationship probably with fast food. Maybe there's a guilty pleasure. And some of it you have to pay a consequence for, right? There's a consequence for eating a bunch of fast food. We have a relationship with it. Even if it's not a good relationship, we have a relationship with it. In our life, again, our life and our quality of life is absolutely connected to the relationships that we have in life. We all have relationships with those people. As much as we try to isolate ourselves from, as much as we try to keep, somebody else or those people, that group of people at arm's length distance or just away from us, we still have relationship with them, even if they don't know us in particular. Like we have a relationship with a group of people and they don't even know us individually. And let's be honest, you probably don't know any of them individually either most of the time, right? Like I said, the quality of our lives is only as good as the quality of our relationships. And this is what we're going to talk about today. We want to be able to move through the difficult relationships, to be able to be intentional about them in order to up our quality of life, to increase and improve our quality of life. Because let's be honest, you're like, no, I can keep them over there, and I can keep my life here and compartmentalize, and we're all good, and I can be great that way. If there's an issue that you have with a negative relationship, it impacts other relationships. And maybe you can keep it at bay for a while, but over time, eventually it's going to surface. Eventually it's going to come out. Eventually you're going to have to realize that you have so isolated yourself from the rest of the world, or from this group of people or these groups of people, that you are not able to see accurately beyond yourself. And this is really, really difficult. And you're going to have friends and family, they're actually going to, hopefully, they're going to say something to you at some point. And you're going to have to realize, is my worldview the only one that is acceptable? Or is there value in other people's worldview as well? Is it possible? Is it possible that these negative impacting relationships may be the most destructive aspect of your life? Is that possible at all? Your relationship with them it's affecting your peace. It's affecting your patience. It's affecting your compassion. A lot of us, if you're a Jesus follower, we would say that, peace, patience, compassion, those things they should be priorities. They should be what people should describe us as. But those people, whoever they may be for you, are affecting those things. You know how I know that? This last year is challenging for most, right? This last year has been challenging for most. Whenever you go through a challenging season, usually we highlight those people in our life. It's not that we have to blame them, but we just highlight their worldview and how poor it is, how off it is, how incorrect it might be. Now, thankfully, we've been given some information, a perspective from someone that, if you're a Jesus follower, you've probably heard of him before, and It's great perspective. If you're not, his name is Paul, the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul actually started as someone that was trying to track down all of the Christians to wipe out this Jesus movement. And then eventually he had this turnaround moment where he became from trying to track them down and ending this movement, he actually became one of the greatest proponents of it. He actually turned around and started to plant all these churches and train and lead people and support people. I mean, he was like crowd funding for churches that he helped plant. He'd go around, the rest of the area, and he'd ask for help, and then he'd send the money off to other churches that he'd already started that needed the help. I mean, amazing. The impact that Paul has had on not just the church historically, but the church even today it's incredible, really. So the Apostle Paul, he definitely has some of those people in his life. It's, for a while it was Christians, and then it was the people that he used to be a part of, the Pharisees and the religious leaders, the Jewish leaders at the time. Like, that's who he was, and then they became those people for him. He kind of had those people on all sides of his life. And he has some pretty good insight specifically to how to manage these relationships. And as much as you might want to say that you don't have a relationship, we just said we have a relationship with anything that we relate to, even if we don't relate well to it. So this is what Paul says in this letter that he wrote to some Christians in Rome. And I think that this is exactly the perspective that we need when we're trying to figure out how to navigate those difficult relationships that we have. It's in Romans chapter 12, starting off in verse 15. He said, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn." It's not about your experience, it's theirs. What are they walking through? What are they feeling right now? Rejoicing and mourning is about what their experiences is currently. And Paul says that we should be rejoicing when they're rejoicing, and we should mourn when they're mourning. That we should be with them, feel with them. He continues on, he says, "Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited." Essentially, if you're looking at this, he's like, you should be engaging with them, and you should try to find out how you can work together. Not by your pride, but actually be willing to work with people that you may see as lower than yourself, which that's a whole pride issue in and of itself. And he says, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone." Which is really interesting because we are really, really great at doing what is right in our own eyes. Aren't you? Maybe it's just me, but I think most of us are in that same boat, that we love to do what we feel is right, what we can justify in our own eyes. We have a reason. We have, a 3-point argument already set up. This is why I made this choice. This is why I'm doing this. It is right in my own eyes. And what Paul is saying, no. It's not about what's right in your eyes. It's what's right in the eyes of everyone. Beyond your 15% worldview. What is right in the eyes of everyone? How does your actions impact other people? This is a difficult and hard conversation to have. It's difficult to wrap our mind around this because, right, we know what's right. We know what's good. We also should be asking the question, does everyone believe that this is good and this is right? Why? And then if this isn't enough, he kind of pushes us over the edge. Verse 18, "Live at peace with everyone." Live at peace with everyone. And if you're a Jesus follower, you may be listening to that going, "Andrew, that's not possible. Living at peace with everyone, it's not possible." And if you're not a Jesus follower, you're just kind of checking this whole Jesus thing out. If you're trying to figure out, you're taking some early steps, or maybe you're just curious about what this is all about. You may even say that this is the exact reason why you haven't stepped across the line of faith. Because you think that we should be. Right? We should be way more at peace with everyone, but it seems like we're not. Why would you join a group that should be but isn't? right? It's difficult for everyone. In fact, back to what Paul said, the full verse is a little bit more understandable. He says, if it is possible, meaning it's not always going to be possible. It's not always going to be possible to live at peace with everyone. Does that mean that you just give up and quit? No, it doesn't. No, it says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, not on them, but on you. What is your piece of the pie? What is your responsibility? What depends on you in order to live at peace with everyone? And if you try to do these things, if you try to do what depends on you and you're still not able to find peace with that person, then you're trying to do the best. You're trying to figure out if it's possible or not, but you're making the effort, and we should all make the effort. Even if it's not possible, we should put some time and energy into seeing if this is possible to live at peace with the other person, with those people in our life. So, as we continue on today, what depends on us? I've got 4 things here that absolutely depend on us. Maybe for you it's less, maybe for you it's more, but these are, I feel like, a great starting point. What depends on us? Our own ego, our pride, our desires, and our prejudices should never get in the way of living peaceably with others. This is what depends on us. These are the stumbling blocks, the hurdles. But this is, our ego is our perception that we are more valuable, more important, that we have our life more put together, and so therefore we're just better. We have it more figured out. Everybody else is a step or two behind us or below us, so they can't quite see it just right. They don't have the experience that I do that would allow me and allow everybody else to know that this is, my perspective is absolutely the right answer. That causes us to look down. When our ego is in play, it causes us to look down on others around us. Maybe it's your pride, right? Well, what does your pride do when it comes to your relationship with those people and other people and those, challenging relationships? Your pride actually keeps you from bending towards, from moving towards, from understanding somebody else. It blinds you from understanding. It keeps you from forgiving. It keeps you from asking for forgiveness and apologizing. Your pride actually is a stumbling block for these difficult relationships. That's why humility comes into such a huge role in our lives. And if you've experienced this at all, when there's points of tension, humility plays a huge, huge role in being able to work and navigate through difficult moments. Maybe it's your desires. And you can even have good desires. Your desires you would even describe as, well, they're positive. They're for the other person. I want the other person to learn, to grow, to have a better, right? We do this. We think we're doing something for them, but the problem is if it's only about trying to fix them, if our desires, if what we're trying to do is trying to fix somebody else before we ever understand them, that becomes a bigger barrier than when we started. Because you have to understand someone first. It's like trying to solve a problem that you don't even know the full equation to. You have to understand it before you can start to move in a direction. And honestly, when you understand somebody else's perspective, you realize, I don't think I need to fix them. I think I just need to understand them better. Maybe it's your prejudices. This is really, really difficult. Right? The prejudice thing is one that you can wander into, but you can't wander out of. It's something that's so subtle, and we don't even realize that we have prejudices. We don't realize that we were given prejudices growing up. From all walks of life, we all have prejudices. Let's just be clear on what that is. A prejudice is a preconceived notion, an idea of who someone or what someone is like without ever actually knowing them. That you have this preconceived notion of how they would respond, how they would react, without ever even having a conversation with them or knowing them at all. So, it's difficult because if you can't see your own prejudices, then how do you know that you need to work them out? I mean, it's like I would never take my truck in to go get it worked on if I didn't know that something was wrong with my car, with my truck. Right? If you had no idea about vehicles at all, like let's just say you turn 15 or 16, you're just starting to drive, and you have zero information other than like there's a steering wheel, there's one pedal that makes you go and one that makes you stop. And if that's all that you know about vehicles, you wouldn't even know that you need to change the oil. Right? You don't know what you don't know. But what's important is to be around people that can allow you to understand that there's more to this. That there's some maintenance, there's some upkeep, there's a whole other world that you are in the dark about, that you need to understand and learn about before you can say, no, I know how to drive a car. Do you know how to drive a car that lasts more than just a short period of time? Because there's more to it than just what happens when you put the keys in the ignition. But there's so much more. Same with relationships. The presumption that we know everything to start with. The presumption that we know everything about somebody else before we even meet them. That's prejudice. And we're all handed prejudice. Some of them are just really difficult to see. Now, thankfully, we have the answer. We actually have the answer to all of those things. And we talked about it last week. And it's right here on the screen. It's empathy. Because empathy, when it's brought into a relationship, whether it's an easy relationship that's good and healthy or a difficult one that's challenging, one that you try to keep at a distance, it's your relationship with those people. When you bring empathy into the equation, empathy evolves our ego. It helps develop and grow. It moves us in the direction of the other person. Right? It actually tones down our ego so we can hear the other person. It proves our pride. Right? It highlights our own pride for us. When we start to evaluate and start to bring in empathy into the relationship, it shows us that we're acting. We have a pride lens over our eyes, that we see the world through pride rather than accurately, the way that it actually is. Or maybe it discloses our desires. That again, we don't think that wanting something for someone is a bad thing. But there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. And absolutely, there's a place for sympathy as well, but it's different than empathy. Sympathy is wanting something for someone. Empathy is feeling something with, understanding and feeling with someone. And in the case of difficult, challenging relationships, understanding that we need our desires disclosed, that we need to actually look at our desires for face value, what it actually is. Are we trying to fix somebody? Are we trying to duplicate our worldview and try to make sure that those goggles fit squarely on that other person's face? Or do we start to actually try to understand? You start to actually try to listen to somebody else. And it professes, our empathy professes our prejudices. It shows us, again, maybe what we've been handed. Maybe you didn't even realize what was handed to you, but you have it in your hands. These prejudices that we've been given. Empathy starts to unveil those prejudices. It starts to allow us to understand and to recognize that we see someone specifically within a certain light because of something that someone taught us in our past and in our history. And we have a presumption about a group of people that we don't even know because of something that was taught and handed down to us. Even if it was, even if it wasn't intentional. It was just accidental. You can still have an accidental prejudice in your life that's at play. You may be wondering, how do we start the empathy conversation? Because this seems difficult. And it is, absolutely. Practicing empathy is difficult because following Jesus is difficult. And this is where, when we start to love like Jesus, it leads us to empathy. It leads us in that direction. So how do we start? What's the starting step? How do we do this? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. Difficult, but simple. Empathy is curious, not critical. Empathy is curious. It asks questions. You know the interesting thing about asking someone questions? You actually have to be talking to a person to ask it questions. Them questions. Empathy is curious. It's not critical. Rather than responding with criticism in a situation, in a circumstance, in a statement, you hear someone say something, you're like, that's exactly why. Instead of jumping onto that bandwagon, instead of jumping onto those emotions and attaching your whole rant and, everything that follows in that direction, try to pause. Try to ask some questions. Try to be curious. What led you to that? What experiences that have you had that led you in this direction? Why is that? I've never experienced that before, so why is that for you? Asking those type of questions actually opens the door for relationship. It opens the door for conversation. And it starts with curiosity. Curiosity leads into empathy. So if you want a first step, start to practice curiosity. And again, just to kind of go over all this again one more time. Empathy evolves our ego. It proves our pride, discloses our desires, and professes our prejudices. And when you want to know what it looks like to follow Jesus, when you want to know what it looks like to actually love like Jesus, not just love Jesus, but love like Jesus, this is part of the picture that Paul uses these words to paint the picture for us. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, as far as it depends on me, live at peace with everyone. If we want to do this, we have to grip hold of empathy. We have to move in the direction of empathy in order for us to be moved in the direction of other people. Now, I don't know if practicing empathy will make somebody else change. In fact, I think most of the time it doesn't make somebody else change, but it does bring about a change in us. We start to love more like Jesus. Isn't that what this is all about? That's what he asked us to do. Not to just love Jesus, but to love like he loved us. Following Jesus is hard. It is difficult. It is challenging. It is not comfortable. Walking in someone else's shoes is not comfortable at all. But that's what he asked us to do. So I don't know about you, but for me, to the best of my ability, as far as it is possible, as far as it depends on me, I'm going to try to live at peace with those, not just around me, but with everyone. Because that's what we're asked and called to do. Let me pray. We'll close out today. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for everything that you've done for us. God, you have loved us so well. And you've loved us through our worst regrets and our biggest frustrations and our worst failures. And in those moments, you didn't shy away from us. And in those moments, your arms were still open for an embrace. You were with us, and you were for us, and you still love us. And God, I pray that we would understand, that we would start to see the world differently. Not just like somebody else sees the world, but more like you see the world, more like you see the other people. That our eyes would be opened to that. That it's not about proving someone right or wrong, but actually valuing somebody else. God, I pray that you would give us patience, that you would give us understanding, that you'd give us the courage and the strength to walk all of this out. And it starts with empathy, which starts with curiosity. So God, I pray that you would make us really good question askers. We thank you for everything that you do for us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Promise maker, promise keeper, you finished what you began. Father, we have come to bow down in worship, lifting up our hearts. We bow down in prayer. All of heaven, we are singing, bright morning star, your eyes blaze like fire, shining like the sun. You're our one desire. Hallelujah. Lover of my soul. With all of heaven, we are singing, singing, singing. With all of heaven, we are singing. In all of heaven, we are singing. All of heaven, we are singing, All the angels cry out, holy is the Lord God. All the earth replies, holy are you. All the angels cry out, holy is the Lord God. All the earth replies, holy are you. So sing it. All the angels cry, holy is the Lord God. All the earth replies, holy are you. Sing it. All the angels cry, holy is the Lord God. All the earth replies, holy are you.
Well, thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for listening to something that hopefully, if you implement this, I promise you that it will benefit your relationships, the good ones and the difficult ones. And come on back next week for the conclusion of In Your Shoes.